First of all, thank you very, very much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me here.
I wanted to begin with just a question I couldn't help but want to ask, which is, what is the origin of your name, which is so unique and beautiful, but I have no idea.
Understood. My dad is from Panama, and my mom's from Ohio. And my dad wanted to name me after a princess in Panama. Her name was Yamati. It's like this Panamanian folktale. And but my mom had wanted to name me Brandy. And so he took her mother's name, my grandmother, Emma, and made Emayatzy. So it's sort of a parental compromise.
Nice. Now in this business, people can be tough about names. Have you ever been given a hard time, you should change it? Did you ever think about changing it?
I've definitely been given a hard time about it. I mean, just in terms of people saying I should change it.
Yeah.
When I first moved here, I believe it was an agent who suggested that I just go by one name, actually. You should just be Emayatzy, not Emayatzy Corinealdi. It's too many syllables. But then I just felt like I'm not Cher, I'm not Madonna, so I didn't do that. And then I've even had people suggest that I just break it up, maybe just go by Emma or Emma Corin or, just things like that. So I've had those suggestions.
But you will not change.
I won't be changing my name. I won't be changing. I really like it. My parents really, put a lot of thought and love into it, and, I love it.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
So, as a kid growing up, did you go to the movies a lot? And if you did, were there any films or actors that were especially favorites or influences for you?
As a kid, I did go to the movies a lot. I remember loving anything that Meryl Streep did, loving anything that Diane Carroll did. There were just so many actresses that when I would watch them on the screen, it made me feel like, wow, they're magnified, in all of their glory. And that was what was exciting to me, was seeing them acting and being glamorous and beautiful, and reminded me of my mom in a lot of ways. So that was what was most exciting for me.
And then when, if you remember, was the first time that you tried acting, even if it was just something silly for fun or whatever? I wonder if you remember that, and also if there was a moment when you knew that this was what you were sort of cut out to do.
Yeah. Was there a moment when I first tried acting? The moment that's coming to my head wasn't the moment when I first tried it, but it was early on, maybe like 13, 14 or so. And I was involved in summer theater, and we were doing different productions. And I got nervous, and we were doing, I believe it was Oliver and Oklahoma. And we just done Oklahoma or something, and I got dressed a little bit too early for my Oliver orphan costume, so, or we were, getting ready to go into Oliver, but Oklahoma wasn't quite done yet. And so I remember just getting dressed as this orphan, and I go on the stage, and no one is dressed, in their orphan costume. And I was so horrified, and that was one of the earlier experiences, and I said, Emmy, pay attention, follow directions,
Right.
But as far as the time when I knew that this was what I wanted to do, I made a concrete decision when I was 18, once I graduated high school, and I was thinking about, of course, college and everything, and I always had been a great student and knowing what I wanted to do. But I said, you know what? I really want to do this. I really want to do this. I've been doing this for all this time. Why can't I do this? Well, maybe I should. You know what? I will. It kind of went like that, this conversation just internally, when I made the decision. And once I made that decision, then I just kind of honed in on that path.
So what was or what is probably the William Esper Studio? Is that where you first sort of really pursued the study of acting?
Well, the William Esper Studio is a school that's in New York,
okay.
But where I first went to school was at the Actors Training Studio, which was in New Jersey.
Okay.
That was just one of my favorite experiences, because it was really just when I got the real, fundamentals, and we would do all kinds of, voice classes and everything there. And then I went to William Esper Studio a few years after that. Yeah.
And so the first credit I think that's associated with your name professionally is 2008, and it came in 2008. And I just wonder, as over the last 4 years since then, what I'm aware of all the credits, but I wonder for you, which ones meant the most to you? Which ones did you feel were the stepping stones leading up to Middle of Nowhere?
One of the ones that meant the most to me would have to be Young and Restless. And that means the most to me because that was my mother's favorite show of all time, if there ever was one. And so it meant a lot to her. And I lost my mom a few years ago, and so for me to have been on that show, and she always would say, "Amy, you should get on that show," and she would say it as if I could actually do it. Call them and see if they can put you on the show. Like, Mom, I don't know them. I don't know who them is or anyone. But she always felt like I would be a good match on Young and the Restless. And so once that opportunity came and I was able to work, with Victor, who she adores, it just meant everything to me. And then to be able to tell him how my mother felt about him, and he being so gracious and kind, it really is a memory that will always stick with me because I know that my mom is really proud of that one.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what if you can explain, what was the annual American Black Film Festival Star Project? Because I think that was one of the first places that really took notice of your potential.
Yeah. The ABFF is the American Black Film Festival. Jeff Friday is the founder. And it's a festival where they celebrate all of the short films and feature-length films, documentaries and such of black filmmakers, up-and-coming black filmmakers. And they had something called the Star Project, and it's a contest for actors, for male and female, and you have to do your own monologue, and if you're chosen from there, then they send you a monologue, and then you go up against, I think, 5 other actresses and actors, and from there they choose who they think is the best, and I was a part of that in 2010, and it was a lot of fun to be chosen for that. And Stephen Hill was also the male winner that year.
Wow. And I should say, you said you were chosen. You're not just chosen, you won. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so just last thing is, prior to Middle of Nowhere, which I understand, Ava has this distribution company that I wonder if you can talk about. Because of the fact that, from what I understand, it's really hard to get stories about people of color made. For whatever reason, it just doesn't happen that often. So I wonder, in your experience before teaming up with Ava, did you find that it's a real uphill climb to find the kinds of parts like Ruby?
Before teaming up with Ava, I definitely found that it was hard to find good quality parts where you weren't being portrayed as a stereotype of sorts. That's always kind of been the battle for I think most actors of color, not even just black, but it hasn't been one of those issues where I've held on to. It's something that I'm aware of, that is there, and that, we can always do better in that arena. But upon meeting Ava, she started this company called the African American Film Releasing Movement, where they showcase films, about African Americans, films that probably wouldn't be able to have the chance to see the light of day any other way. And so being able to team up with someone like her, who was so passionate about getting our stories out, it really makes a difference, a huge difference. And so even though I'm not one that holds on to that, I also am aware of it, and it's a necessity that it does change, because I think Middle of Nowhere has been the perfect example of where, we have emotions and experiences beyond, the stereotypes that are portrayed about us, and I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely. And so Middle of Nowhere, just for the record, your first feature film, right?
Middle of Nowhere is my first lead in a feature, yes.
First lead in a feature,
yeah.
Okay. And so how did you first cross paths with Ava? Did you know her before you heard about Middle of Nowhere, or was it through Middle of Nowhere?
I had never met Ava prior to Middle. I met her during the audition process. I had known of her by her film I Will Follow that she had done. And I'd actually read an article maybe about, 6 months or so prior to the Middle audition. And I read an article about her, and she was talking about I Will Follow, and, what was the catalyst for that story. And in reading it, it was like, this woman is amazing, you know what I mean? Just on paper, having never met her. So when this came up and I made it, so far into the callbacks to be able to meet her, I felt like I was, meeting just this amazing, amazing woman, because she is all of that, all of those things that you would hope to be in a person who has so much drive and compassion and intelligence. She is all of that, and so I was really excited to be a part of it.
And the way you heard about this was, I guess, through an agent or something?
Yes.
And I read that you were originally coming in, not for Ruby, but
but for Rosie.
Wow, the
yeah,
sister.
I originally had come in for the role of the sister, Rosie. On that first audition, our casting director is Aisha Coley, and I read for Rosie. And at the end of the audition, she says, I think I want to give you these ruby sides. Take a look at these, and we're going to have you come back. And I remember walking out of the room and saying, okay, this is my chance. Because I'd read the script, and just the woman of Ruby was absolutely a jewel, a gift, a blessing. And when I read it, I said, I would love to do this part, but I'm sure it's already cast. And if it's not, they're not going to cast me. So, I didn't really think about it again. So when I walked out of that room with those sides in my hand, I just knew that I was just going to run with it as best I could. And from what I understand, because of the issue that we talked about earlier, that there are not so many parts for actors and actresses of color that are really this good, there were a lot of people that were interested who you were chosen over. I mean, absolutely there were people who were interested, understandably so because of that. There are just not many meaty roles like this. So that's what made it just all the more sweeter when Ava gave me that shot, when she decided to trust in me with that. Just thinking about it, it brings right back to the forefront of my mind just the what I've always wanted to do as an actor. This role is the kind of role I've always wanted to do, and it's something that I'm proud of, that I feel like my parents, my family can be proud of, my nieces and nephews who look up to me can be proud of. And so for Ava to give me the shot, it means so much more than just this to me. It really means everything.
Do you remember where you were when you found out you got it?
I absolutely do. I was sitting at Katsuya, in Studio City. I'd gone out to celebrate just having a really good, at this point, callback. Because whenever I have a really good audition or callback, I generally go to Cold Stone. That's kind of like my own personal tradition. And so this time it was a little bit later in the day and I was hungry, so I said, I'll go treat myself to sushi since I'm a new sushi eater and I feel like I'm doing something. So yeah, I went to Katsuya, and that's a whole nother funny story, whereas there was someone in Katsuya, a casting director, who knew Howard Barish, our producer, who called him and then said, I saw a girl at Katsuya who I think would be great for this role. I know you're looking for your lead in this film. I saw this girl, I don't know her name, but I'll describe her. And once he described me, Howard said, that sounds like Emayatzy, the girl that just got the part.
Oh my God.
I could not believe it.
Holy crap, that's crazy.
I could not believe it. It was amazing.
What are the odds?
What are the odds?
Wow, amazing. So
yeah.
So you found out, and I guess one of the things I know that you've said in other interviews that really drew you to this and that was important to Ava was that this flips any stereotype or preconceptions about people, about behavior that we might have, the whole movie, the script, completely upside down. And I just, I wonder, there were certain things though that I guess, like the fact that this is a woman whose husband is in prison and all that I wonder, how do you prepare for that aside from reading the script and really learning? Like, you did some things, right? I know you reached out to people, and I just wonder if you could talk about some of that preparation and research.
Sure. In my preparation, because I did know of two women personally who, had been touched by having their loved ones incarcerated, they're the first people that I really reached out to. And the interesting is, I've known their stories, for a very long time, but reading this script really made me want to ask those more important questions, the more intelligent questions of them. So that's what I did first. And then from that, I just took my own personal experiences of heartbreak, of loss, and kind of just put all of that into one. And it really gave me the catalyst that I think that I needed to approach Ruby from where she was at that point. And
I guess I certainly have to ask you about your co-stars, who another just crazy thing about this, I know that you'd worked with Amari Hardwick before, right?
Well, Amari and I knew each other.
Sorry,
yeah, we knew each other from, he had started something called the Actors Lounge, or the Poetry Lounge, and so I knew him from that, like, I don't know, 7 years ago or something. And then just, on the audition circuit and such. So when she told me that Amari was going to be in it and playing my husband, it was like, oh, this is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Pretty awesome.
Oh, so many things there sort of say it was really kind of meant to
Truly.
be. But So, just for a second, if you could psychoanalyze Ruby,
Okay.
why does this woman, who is so smart and driven and all of that, why does she? What was the root of the attraction in the first place to Omari's character? Especially when we later sort of learn in the film that it was almost self-deceptive. Like you knew, Ruby knew that it didn't seem 100% right. There were questions that couldn't be answered that she wasn't really pursuing.
Right.
So what do you think was why did she get drawn to him in the first place, and then why did she stick around for so long?
Yeah. You know, I feel like Ruby is the perfect example of how we as humans make decisions based on, if we were to look at the other dots, you know, that were left along the trail, you know, we would be able to say, hey, I probably shouldn't do this, or I should at least think about it. In the beginning, everything with Ruby and Derek was beautiful. You know, she was attracted to him because he's an intelligent man. You know, he's been a provider for her. You know, everything was perfect. She had no reason to suspect anything. But somewhere along the way, you know, she started to see a couple of cracks. But it's kind of like how you're in a situation and you see the cracks happening, but you don't really know. You can't quite put your finger on it. You want to stop it. You try to put, you know, we as women, we put well, at least I do anyway, put clear fingernail polish when you have a run in your stocking. Like, you try to stop it. You know, you try to stop it, but you can't quite because you don't really know. Another one may come. But I feel like it's similar to that in the sense that she saw these things beginning to happen, but didn't quite know what it was or what they were or how to address them. And after a while of not saying anything, you can find yourself in the middle of nowhere. And I feel like that's exactly what happened with her. You know, she was a woman who was with a man who had the best of intentions, and they just found themselves on a different path than they had both expected, truly.
And so in the course of making this movie, first of all, who did you anticipate the audience was going to be? Was it always, did you think it would reach as wide an audience as it has, or you know, so that's part A. And then part B, when did you first realize, perhaps during the course of it, I don't know, that it was something special, unusual, different from the run-of-the-mill movie that people make?
Oh, that's a really fun question. Who did I think the audience was going to be initially? You know, I will say that from the little thing that I felt on the inside of me when I first read the script, for one, I just saw the whole movie playing out, but I felt something. You know, it moved me in a kind of way. I saw pieces of me in there, pieces of people that I knew in the story. So when I felt that, I've found that even though my career has not yet reached all the heights that I wanted to go to yet, you know, I'm on that path, but I've always made decisions in the films that I've made, or at least tried to do things that give you that little feeling inside. And so this gave me that. And I think once you have that, everyone else will have a piece of that. So in that sense, I think I at least hoped that people would feel that from what I felt in reading it. But then for the film to have this experience, you know, I remember after Sundance, or during Sundance, and the film was screening there, and our first screening, and how people were just so moved by it. From the first screening to, I think we had about 7 screenings in Sundance. The range of people that would come up to us, people that stood up in the audience and said, hey, that's me. People who said, once we left the stage, hey, that was me, I just didn't want to stand up. You know, all of those kinds of people, it really just drove home the point for me that good work speaks for itself. You know, stories that people can relate to, they really speak for themselves. And that has been one of the most beautiful parts of this journey.
I have to ask you about some of the other beautiful parts, because if I can just list off a few things that I would have guessed that you probably couldn't have dreamed about when you were working on this. But okay, so your LA premiere hosted by Angela Bassett, I believe. You have one of your biggest champions via Twitter is Oprah Winfrey. You go to the Governor's Awards and meet Sidney Poitier. You go to the Gotham Awards and win Best Breakthrough Actor over some pretty impressive competition. And today, congratulations, the NAACP Image Award for a nomination for Best Actress. So, I mean, what are you processing this? Has there been a specific highlight? Just what do you make of it all?
Just having you read it all in a list like that is God, Golly. I'm trying to process it all. I'm trying to process it all.
Indie Spirit nomination too, by the way. Sorry, that was.
Yeah, I mean, truly, and also last night, you know, we had another screening that was hosted by BET where Alfre Woodard was our host and Diane Carroll, Alfre Woodard. I mean, it has been something that I could never have asked for. I've asked for things with regards to the kind of career I've always wanted. All of this, you know, the opportunities to meet all of these people you just mentioned, and opportunities to be, you know, involved with these awards, you know, that you've mentioned, extra blessings that I never would have anticipated at all. And I feel like, golly, I'm not going to get overwhelmed and cry. I just feel very honored.
And finally, have you noticed already that this movie has changed things, it opened up new doors for you, and where do you hope it leads to? What should we, people who see this and love it and are curious about you, what would you like to see happen with your career over the coming years? I think a lot of people are expecting big things now.
I do feel like, you know, being a part of Middle of Nowhere has changed things, you know, just even just like you mentioned, being in some of the rooms, you know, that I've been able to be a part of, and opportunities that are yet on the horizon. It has opened up that door, and that's something I'm really excited about, you know. And as far as the kinds of things that I want, the kind of career that I want, it has always been a desire of mine to do good work. And good work manifests itself in different kinds of ways, you know. But that's always been my driving force, you know. Meryl Streep has the kind of career I admire, you know. I love the career of Angela Bassett and her choices, you know. So if I could be anywhere in that vein, you know, and Denzel and his choices and his career, if I could do anything like any of those three, I would be winning. I would be winning. And so that is my desire.
I'm very excited to follow you, and I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Great. Cool.
That was fun.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. It was great.